So, last week we were talking about the umbilical cord, and something God really spoke to me so clearly about, as I was thinking about it, is that for a child coming out of their mommy's tummy, there's a process where they cut the umbilical cord. That actually there's a big change in the identity, in a way, of the child. No more is he or she a fetus that's attached to the mom, but now he or she is this independent kind of person, this separate being with, in fact, sometimes that is the trauma of the birth process for the child, is they're coming out from a place of comfort and cozy, and it's all nice and whatever. Have I told you this before? I had a 2-day-long labor. My mom had 2 days long.
Was that the longest?
Because it was very cozy.
Tennessee will come out.
It was very, very cozy in my mommy's tummy, and my poor mom did not know what she was going to do. 2 days long, she waited for me.
Oh.
And when I finally came out, it was like, I want to go back. Very cozy. There is a big change. There's a big shock to the child, and actually there's a shift in identity, a shift in not just physical place, but a shift in where they're going to be depending on, the things that they're going to be depending on. So in the same way, when we were in the world, there were things that we were clinging on to, there were things that were our physical sort of food, but also our emotional food and our spiritual food. And then we come to Jesus, and it's actually a shock. It's actually a big shock. Do you know some people, that's why they end up going back into the world, because it's a big shock. It's like, what? Do you mean I have to, live this way? I have to not swear? I have to ditch some of those friends that I'm with? I have to, what are some of the things you have to leave behind?
Change how you spend your time.
How you spend your time? Yes, yeah. Some of the way they spend your money, some of the things you watch on television, some of the things you are in on the internet, all those things, you've got to leave them behind, and it's a shock to the system. And some people are like, wow, I want to go back, because actually it's too much for me to cope with. And actually, when we change, when we become a born again, that's the word, isn't it? You become born again. And Nicodemus asked Jesus, how does somebody become born again? Do they go back in their mother's tummy? And then they whatever. For me, when I was born, I would have loved to do that. But my poor mom was like, no, you're not coming back in here.
She evicted you.
Get out! Exactly. You're out. Red card. You've been evicted. This is it. My circumstances had changed completely. And I had to get used to a new way of dependence, a new way of doing life, a new way of doing things.
There's no going back.
And there's no going back. Now, what we're going to see in the story of Ruth is how it's really a story of bread. It's actually a story of where they were going to get their dependence, their spiritual dependence from. Because it starts off saying, it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land. In other words, there was no bread. There was no food. And then there was a certain man of Bethlehem. Anybody know what the word Bethlehem means?
Used to, I can't remember.
House of bread.
Oh, wow.
It's the house of bread, Bethlehem. It literally is where bread was manufactured. Back in their day, if you wanted to go for lots of loaves of bread, you went to Bethlehem. That's why, where was Jesus born?
The house of bread.
The house of
The bread of life.
The bread of life came into this starving famine of a world through the house of bread. Now, this man, he was a resident of Bethlehem, where there would normally be bread, But then a famine came on the land that was so severe that there was virtually no bread, even in Bethlehem.
The
Of
house of
all
bread.
places, the one place where you would expect to find bread, there was no bread.
Some serious famine.
There was a very, very serious famine. And this instigated a catalogue of events that not only led to his death, but they led to the death of his sons. The moral of the lesson is this. Very often when we are desperate for bread, we will do desperate things. And we will sometimes go to places where we are vulnerable. And sometimes when there is no bread, when there is no spiritual bread, when there is no maybe emotional bread, we end up going to the land of Moab. And if you remember who Moabs were, the Moabites were descendants of close, very close, Abraham's nephew, Lot. Well done, Lot. The Moabites were the descendants of Lot. Can I remind you of the story of Abraham and Lot? We've looked at
Lot's
this
not
before.
that bad, were they?
And Lot's Lot were not that bad. Well,
Not comparison.
He had his
Abraham,
lot, yeah.
Huh?
He had his
he
lot.
had his lot.
They're a right lot.
Abraham used to live in modern day Iraq.
Wow.
Somebody's got the time. I need to keep an eye on the clock.
Yeah, you see that what famine or something.
This is really this.
Abraham used to live in modern day Iraq. Long, long time ago. And then God called him and said to him, get up, leave the land of your father and your mother and leave your family behind and go to a land that I will show you, a land flowing with milk and honey. Abraham kind of disobeyed. He, yes, left his father and mother behind. Actually, strictly speaking, if you read the story in Genesis 12, he went with his father and mother initially,
Oh.
and with Lot. And then he left his father and mother halfway in what was modern day Syria.
He went with his wife as well, didn't he?
Sorry?
He went with his wife.
He went with his wife.
He
That's
came
right.
from a place called
Of the Chaldeans. That's right. So he was told to leave the land of and to go to a place. Anyhow, Abraham's brother died, leaving Lot.
Lot's dad.
And Abraham kind of felt for Lot a bit. He was like, this is my nephew. So he took Lot with him. Something he shouldn't have done. Because that relationship between Abraham and Lot, or between Abraham's people and Lot's people, up until today, there is still an enmity as to whose land is who. Abraham entered the land, he and Lot, and then there came a moment when he had his sheep, Lot had his sheep. They had a big quarrel between them because there was too many sheep in the land for the land to look after, so they decided, let's go separate ways. You go one side, I go the other side. Lot picked the land of Sodom and Gomorrah because it looked all nice and lush. Looked very nice and lushy.
So the green grass looks green on the other side came from them.
Yes. And Abraham chose the barren, kind of dry land of Mamre, which is kind of modern day Hebron. It's sort of dry and barren and not much there, seemingly. But God was his bread. God sustained him. Lot, on the other hand, was drawn to the bright lights. He was like, "Ooh, this looks nice."
Big
It was very fertile round
It was
Sodom.
fertile. It looked very green, and he thought, "Yay, I'll do well. I'll prosper here. My flocks will prosper. I'll become rich, and everything will go hunky dory." Lot ends up in the land of Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah end up in Lot, basically. Because he begins to take up their cultures and their customs so much that when the angels come to warn Lot and his family that judgment was coming on the city of Sodom, because of the evil that was going on there. There was a lot of sodomy. That's where we get the word sodomy from. There was a lot of homosexuality and a lot of really vile things that were going on in Sodom and Gomorrah. When the angels came, they actually found Lot sitting by the city gate, which only elders of the people who were really important in the town, got to sit at the city gate. It was kind of like the back in those days, the council. It was sort of, if you were a really important person, that you'd embedded yourself so much in the culture that you would sit in the city gate, because that's where the important decisions of the town were made. So the angels turn up, and Lord says to them, hey, come to my place and stay the night. And then the angels break it very suddenly, very sort of abruptly. By the way, you need to get out of this place, because God is about to pour his wrath on this place because of the sin of this place. Lot's children, Lot's sons, Lot had 2 daughters. His son-in-laws, the men who were married to the daughters, did not believe the angel. They were like, you're just telling fables. Nothing's going to happen to us. And Lot, cut a long story short, ends up having to grab hold of, or rather the angel ends up having to grab hold of Lot's 2 daughters and his wife, and they frog march Lot out of the city, because Lot and his family did not want to leave the city. It had become so much a part of them that they did not want to leave the city. So when that all happened, the angel drives them out of Sodom and Gomorrah. The wrath of God is poured out of Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot and his 2 daughters end up actually Lot and his wife and his 2 daughters leave. Remember what happened to his wife?
She looks back.
She turns back and... George, what happened to Lot's wife?
Turned into a pillar of salt.
She turned into a pillar of salt. Because the city was in her. She looked back and she was like, oh, what about my flowers? Oh, what about this? Oh, what about that person? Oh. Lot's wife dies, leaving Lot and his 2 daughters. Anybody know what happened to Lot and his 2 daughters after that?
They got the old boy drunk.
This is a bit exactly.
And then, how would you say, had their way.
Yes.
And
yes.
they became with child.
Yes.
Yeah.
They became with child.
Was it to keep the family
name going?
Name to continue, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Moab was son to one of Lot's daughters.
So they would have been the, how would you say, descendants from incestuous behaviour.
They were descendants of incestuous behaviour. And because of that, sexual immorality was very much rife in amongst of the Moabites, because that was their beginning.
Their legacy.
Literally, yeah, that was their origins. There was a lot of sexual morality. So much so that actually, you can read about the story later on in Numbers 22 and 23, when the children of Israel come out of the wilderness, they're about to go into the promised land, they're looking very menacing and very strong. Balaam is hired to curse the children of Israel. He fails in that whole process. The whole story of the talking donkey and everything. Balaam fails, and the Moabites kind of go, oh well, we failed to curse the children of Israel. What shall we do? I know what. We'll seduce them. This is kind of our thing. This is our culture. So the Moabites were known for having a very seductive, they had all these gods of seduction and all this worship that was all about immorality and sexual immorality. And because of that, it was not a really holy place. So that all goes into a little bit of context when you can see that this man called Elimelech, when there was a famine in the land, there was no bread in the land, he made a choice to go somewhere because things got very, very desperate. And he went to the country of Moab. he went to the country of Moab. I just want to say, there are going to be in your life times when things will get desperate. And when things get desperate, that is when we're very vulnerable to making a choice for the nearest quick fix, the nearest place where you can run to get bread. Luke chapter 1. A certain man of Bethlehem, the very first verse, went to dwell in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. He went there kind of hoping that there would be bread, there would be food, there would be sustenance, they'd be able to look after themselves. Anyhow, he gets there, 10 years down the road, sadly he dies. And after he dies, his 2 sons die, leaving Naomi with the 2 daughters who would have been seen as descendants of Moab by the fact that that was where they came from. Ruth and Orpah end up without husbands in this land, and Naomi herself ends up without a husband. You all have heard of that term, a breadwinner?
Yeah.
Know what that means?
No.
No?
There's somebody who has to do the work,
Yes.
and for the rest of the family,
Yes.
who gets a wage, and it sustains the family.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a breadwinner is like if there's somebody in the house, typically in old times it would be the man.
Yeah.
Culturally, in fact in Jewish times, the man was seen as the breadwinner, which meant they did the work so that the bread would come into the family. They would not be lacking in bread. They would have food to put on their plates.
Sometimes they may have to become the servant of someone else to get a wage, and
Yes. And then be able to earn a
then
living.
turn back with the wages. Yeah.
And in some cultures, this is very, very strict. Some cultures have it that women are not allowed to work. That actually it's very, very strict. That the men are seen as the ones who bring the provision in, and the ladies are the ones who then look after the provision. They
They'll be the housekeeper.
The housekeeper,
Yeah.
exactly. They nurture the children, they bring up the children and all that. So, what we see here, by the fact that number one, there was a famine. After the famine, they go to Moab, and then Naomi's husband, who would have been the breadwinner, dies. So still no bread, and then the 2 sons die. So now there's like doubly no bread. There is literally no way. And in Jewish culture, it was a big, big deal. Actually, the man was seen to be the one who would sustain or be the source of provision for the woman. And actually, in Jewish culture, or in the culture of those days, if the man died, what would happen is that the woman would then be married to the brother to make sure that she was looked after, she was catered for, that she wasn't just left desolate. Which is why in the Bible times, if you come across a situation where it says a widow is left, what normally happens is that the woman has no more, or the woman's husband has no more brothers. Basically, she's been married to somebody, the husband has died.
Yeah.
Culturally, what would happen is that then the woman would be married to the brother, the next along brother, so that she would be catered for. She would. The whole point of marriage was that she would be left destitute.
It may not always be seen that they would share the bedroom,
Yes.
but they would be
It was
like a family.
It was a provision thing.
Yeah.
It was, and also a name thing.
Yeah.
That they would receive the inheritance. That there would be some catering of their provision, basically. And then, if it happens that they end up being a widow, then basically that means the bread is gone.
Brothers run out.
There is no bread. The widow is literally, it's panic time. And this is what happened to Naomi and her 2 daughters. Not only did her husband die, but the 2 sons, yes.
So it would have been her sons, but she had obviously they had wives, so
Yes, that's right.
yeah.
Yes.
So when
I'm not thinking straight.
they were struck down or afflicted in what way it was,
Yes.
she then all she had was
The two daughters.
the two daughter-in-laws,
Yeah.
That's true. It was the
which
daughters.
was even more of a burden because they had no husbands,
Yes.
and so therefore she,
She would have to look after herself plus the two daughters now.
yeah.
So it was quite a job. Now, where is this got to do with umbilical cords? What's this got to do with umbilical cords? Basically, Ruth and Orpha had, during that time when they were in Moab, they had husbands. The husbands died. They no longer had provision. And then Naomi turns to these two daughters and says, go back to your people. Go back and live with your people. Go back to the culture that is your people, your own people. Now, one of them says, I will go back, and the other one doesn't. Because one of them has completely cut off from the people that she was a part of. She no longer sees herself as part of those Moabites, because what does she say? Lucy read it out so very nicely. Entreat me not to leave you, or turn back from following after you, for where you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Can you see how Ruth completely cut the umbilical cord? And she decided that her people, she would be willing to leave her aunties, her uncles, her family, her cousins, all that extended family, to go with Naomi. To go to a place where she didn't really know, because she didn't come from there. So she didn't know Bethlehem or any of that, but she locked herself into Naomi, and she said, your people will be my people, and your God will be my God.
Yeah.
What's
Can I?
Yeah.
Because I think Moab and Judea, which is the area of where
Yeah.
we went to, wasn't necessarily far geographically speaking,
No, yeah.
but it was a long way because they had the River Jordan
Yes.
across.
Yes.
It was a long way culturally speaking.
Yes.
It was like a completely.
It was actually a different kingdom.
Yeah.
It had a different worship system. In fact, if you read what Naomi says very specifically, she says to the children, she arose to her daughters and with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab.
Probably a different language and everything, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They would have had, everything was completely different.
Yeah.
And then she kissed them and she says to them, look, go, return each to your mother's house, and the Lord deal with you kindly. May the Lord grant that you may find rest, that each of you have a husband. Verse 11. But Naomi said, turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there still sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, if I should have a husband today and bear sons, would you wait for them until they're fully grown? No, my daughters, it grieves me for your sakes, for the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. Then they lifted up their voices and wept. And then
15.
Orpha kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. And then she said, look, your sister has gone back to her people and to her what?
Unto her gods.
And to her gods.
Return thou after thy
And
sister.
then Naomi tries to persuade Ruth.
Yeah.
So Naomi is telling Ruth, Naomi is saying to them, you need to go back to your people and their gods, go back to that whole worship system, that whole whatever, because
Yeah. I'm just beginning to wonder if Ruth had somehow along the way, had learnt of Naomi's worship of the one God.
Yes.
And had
Yes.
a hunger and thirst to know more of this one. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
because of the words that she says. She actually says, isn't it? She not only clings to Naomi, Ruth not only clings to Naomi, but Ruth clings to their God. Your people shall be my people, and your God shall be my God.
She knew exactly what she was saying.
She clung on to a whole way of doing life. Now, what's this got to do with the umbilical cord? It's got everything to do with the umbilical cord. During a time of famine, we can easily become attached to things that actually...
Because the other one was like gods,
Yes.
and now it's just a singular big
This is
God
true.
with a big G.
This is true.
Yeah.
Well spotted. Yes. The God.
Amen.
The real source of bread.
There's it.
And this is it. During the time of famine, we can end up going to... Remember the story of the prodigal son? During the land of famine, he left his dad, give me my inheritance. Give me my portion of it.
Riotous living, as they say.
And he went and he wasted it on riotous living, partying. And then when he finished doing all the partying, the money ran out, all those friends, all those ladies, those guys, they ran off and they left him. So he went and he attached himself to a citizen of that country. He locked himself in. There was a cord that was formed there to somebody because he thought that's where I will get my bread, I'll get my provision.
If you ask, you can stay with it. You're going to have to feed the pigs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was like, I'll do anything to feed, just to get food, I will do anything so that I can eat. And what often happens when we are desperate, when we are hungry, we attach ourselves to things, we lock ourselves onto things, and we form cords, and this is what kind of happened with Elimelech. Famine, there's nowhere, I'm just going to go to the Moabites. Yes, they have all these gods, they've got all this strange worship, they had all sorts of weird practices and very strange kind of gods of fertility and whatever. So to leave the God of the Hebrews and to go and live in the land of Moab, it was a shameful thing. But he was desperate. He was like, I need bread, and I've heard that maybe there might be some bread there. So he ran off to Moab, and then he dies. And then his two sons die. And then the breadwinner is no more. There is nobody there to earn any bread. And then Naomi makes the sensible choice. She thinks, I'm going to go back to Bethlehem, the house of bread, even though there is no bread. Yes, Grace, did you have a question?
No.
You're just thinking. She goes to the house of Bethlehem, and she decides, I'm going to go back. And now the two daughters have a choice. Or the two daughters-in-law have a choice. Do I stay with my system here that I am locked into, or do I go with this new family that I am now a part of? Now, the thing that I wanted to speak to you about, really, really important, if you take nothing away from this morning, take this. It is that when you break that umbilical cord, that you take on a new identity. It's actually to do with identity. Somewhere in those 10 years, there was a flip in Ruth's mind that I'm leaving that family behind, and Naomi and her people are going to be my family. If she stays here, I'm with them. If she goes, I'm with them. This is my lot.
A lot.
This is my lot. Exactly.
That lot.
Is that what that law?
That flip in her mind, that switch of identity and belief system is what actually kickstarts the whole story. Because from there she ends up going back to Bethlehem with Naomi. She ends up becoming part of the whole thing with Boaz and being part of an amazing inheritance. But if she hadn't done that flip, which is what the other sister did, Orpha, even though she was in the house helping Naomi, doing whatever, she still was like, well, I kind of like my family. The identity thing, your identity is a lot to do with how you see yourself. And actually, how you see yourself has a lot to do with where you're getting your bread. In other words, if you see yourself as belonging to that lot of people, this often happens with alcoholics with addiction, is that there will be an identity thing going on. This is who I am, and this is my lot of people. We go out and we get drunk. This is my culture. This is my everything, and that is where their bread, in quotes, they're eating. That's where they're sustaining themselves, because that's what they've identified with. And then you go to the alcoholic and you say to him, actually, well, that bread is moldy. It's just destroying your life. It's destroying your family. And there is another bread. Jesus, the true bread, the life. He said, if you eat of me, you will not go hungry again. And then the alcoholic leaves the bread behind, and they then decide to go and join with Jesus. But sometimes what can happen is that they've not done that flip of identity. They've not done the switch that actually this is no longer who I am. And sometimes this is why it's so important to pay attention to the time when somebody becomes born again, to help them to understand that it's not just a prayer, it's not just a religion they're joining, it's not just some philosophy they're joining, it's a change of identity. When we were in Kenya during lockdown, we did a bit of house visiting with our senior pastor. We did a bit of traveling around visiting families with my senior pastor. And one of the families we went to, I'll never forget, the father said this. He had given his daughter off in marriage. And he said that from that day when he said to me personally, he said, from that day when he gave his daughter away in marriage, from then on, the daughter doesn't belong in his home. She has another home. And she needs to start thinking that way, that she doesn't belong in his home. So when the daughter comes, if the daughter ever came home by herself, he would ask her, where is your husband? He would always ask her, where is your husband? The day that she left the home, the room no longer was her room. It was a big shock to the sister. Because she had to do a flip. She had to do it.
Not in England.
She had to do a flip in thinking, because that change was important for their marriage. Actually, by the way, this is an important thing in marriage. Jesus said,
George,
unless the man leaves his father and mother and becomes joined to the wife, then actually that is a marriage. There are many marriages that break up, that struggle, because that process of leaving and cleaving hasn't happened. Marriage is fundamentally to do with, I don't know how I'm going to marry, it's to do with leaving and cleaving. You've got to leave something behind, and what will happen is, in that instance, there will constantly be something undermining the marriage, because you've not let go. Because the way the marriage is, you're supposed to leave that, and then the two of you become a unit. Now what Ruth did is an amazing thing. She changed. She literally, it was an internal change in her, that she no longer saw herself as a Moabite, she saw herself as a Hebrew. How do you see yourself? How do you see yourself? Because identity is a lot to do with how we see ourselves. Like when you're born into a family and you become part of that family, just by virtue of the fact that you're born into that family, there is already a certain inherent kind of belongingness. And there's things that you do, like you can walk into the fridge, there's things that you can do in that family that other people will not be able to do naturally. Now, what happens for us as Christians is that we become adopted into God's family. We leave something behind and we become adopted into His family. What that means, literally, is that we are meant to see ourselves as Christ sees us. That I see myself, that actually, this is who I am. I am a child of God. I am a belonging. This is where I belong, and this is kind of who I am. And actually, if we don't see ourselves that way, how we see ourselves will materialize in how we act. The things that we do. Orpha didn't see herself as a Hebrew. Because of that, her choices, it dictated her choices. She was like, yes, Naomi, I love you. Thank you very much for all you've done for me. And thank you so much, but I'm going back to my people. Because she still saw herself as a Moabite. Ruth, on the other hand, saw herself as Hebrew. She changed how she thought, her thinking, so that she picked on a new identity, and it dictated her choices going forward. Because of that, she was able to be part of an amazing inheritance that would end up all the way to become the Messiah. Now, because
Her grandmother.
she was, that's right, she married Boaz. Boaz was granddad to David, and then David, the lineage goes all the way down to the Messiah himself. Yeah, what's amazing, the amazing thing about the story of the prodigal son is that when he came back to his dad, at that point he hadn't really done anything, and yet his dad put on him the robe, gave him the ring, and said, from now on, your family. It was a huge thing, big thing. In fact, to the Jewish mind, they were like, hey, he's not supposed to do that. Because in the Jewish thinking, he's done everything wrong.
Yeah.
And he comes back, and instead he gets given the robe and the ring.
It's legalistic, isn't it, the way that we're thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually...
There was no grace, there's no mercy.
Yeah, because what was going on was what the father was saying is, you are mine. You're mine. You're mine. There was an amazing story. This is a real life story of a lady. I was watching this on the news a while back. I'll finish with this. I was watching this, and it was of a lady who, more than 10 years ago, it was actually in the news in the southwest, Bristol sort of news, who, when she got to her teens, as a young girl, when she got to her teens, she falsely accused her dad of sexually abusing her so that she could kick the dad out of the house and lay claim to the actual, like the house itself.
Wow.
There was some way in which she would end up, basically, the dad, firstly she wanted compensation, and then the other thing that she basically was after ultimately was the dad's wealth, the dad's possession, his house and everything.
It's all financial gain.
So the interesting thing was she went with this story, a concocted story about being sexually abused by her dad, to the police. The police believed her initially, and the dad ended up going through absolute hell, basically. He went through the legal system, the judges believed her, he ended up being thrown into prison, and then somewhere, it became apparent that this was a huge miscarriage of justice. Her story fell apart. And then they had to revisit the whole thing. The dad got released from prison, and when he came out of prison, the news people came and interviewed him, because this was like one of those really bizarre stories. The news people interviewed him, and the news lady asked the father, do you still love your daughter after all that she's done? And guess what his answer was? He was like, yes, because it's my daughter.
Exactly.
It's my daughter. I couldn't do anything else but love my daughter. There was a connection of identity, even though the daughter had done everything wrong.
Yeah.
All the stuff that the daughter didn't, in the father's mind, take away the fact that this is how she sees, this is who this girl is. Yeah. She is my daughter. And this is an important thing, because actually, how we see ourselves will determine our actions. It will rule over our actions. It's an important thing from time to time. It's a good thing, I say, to look in the mirror every so often and read scripture, to remind yourself of who you are.
Was she thrown in prison for fraud?
She was very what?
I said, was she thrown in prison for fraud?
Well, perversion of the justice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. She actually, interestingly, in that case, the dad refused to press charges. The dad was asked whether he would press charges, and he said, "No, it's my daughter," and he forgave her. It was an amazing thing. When the news people were interviewing the dad, he was in tears, he was in floods of tears, his mom was next to him, the mom was next to him, and he was like, "This is my daughter. I cannot but do anything. This is my daughter, my blood, my own flesh." So how you see yourself, it's a good thing to look in the mirror every so often and let the Word of God dictate how you see yourself. Read it and say, "This is who I am." For example, that verse we read earlier in Colossians chapter 2, "But I have been reconciled with God, and He now presents me," Colossians chapter 1, I said it wrong again this time. I keep saying it wrong. I keep saying it wrong.
Remember ye not the former things.
Sorry?
Remember not the former things.
Remember not the former things. Eloise's own song. That is it. Do not remember the former things. It's in Isaiah chapter something, but 43, yeah, something like that.
Former things are not.
Do not remember the former things. In other words, there was something you were umbilically attached to before, like Naomi and Ruth and Orpah. There was something they were umbilically attached to, but Ruth decided it's time to snap that cord. This is where I belong. These are my people. I'm going to be with these people. And it dictated everything from there on. It's a good thing to actually look at yourself. There are times when you will realize in your own life that you've let the Lord down. Anybody ever do that?
Yeah.
We all do that. Here's the truth. All your actions come from a belief. All your actions will come from a belief. There will be a belief somewhere in the system. It's a little bit like fruit and roots. There is a belief somewhere that you will dictate the things that you do. For example, you believe the chairs right now are strong, don't you?
So you sit on it.
And then you sit on them.
You
Imagine
find out.
if you had a bit of doubt in the chair, what would you do?
Check it out.
You'd be like, I'm not so sure I'm going to sit on that chair. Your actions dictate a lot of, your beliefs rather dictate a lot. Now, the thing I'm trying to encourage in you is to look at the Word of God as your identity. Let it be your identity. Do not believe other identities. Do not believe the culture of the Moabites or other things that people might say over you, that this is who you are, or even worse, things that you yourself might say over yourself. You were once alienated, that was the old guy, and you are enemies in your mind by your wicked works. Yet now He has reconciled me. Now. He has reconciled me in the body of His flesh through death to present me holy and blameless and above reproach in His sight. That's who I am. That's my identity.